trouble in these waters.
We all go a little insane on this island.
You all know me.
Martin, it's all psychological.
Know how I earn a living.
Nobody cares because there is no proof. You catch them, you kill them, you leave them out there.
Get the mirror off my back so I don't have any more of this zone crap.
You got that.
And welcome back to the Jaws Obsession, where we are here to share with you, prove to you, convince you, or remind you that Jaws is the greatest movie of all time. Thank you very much for returning once again for this now episode 96, Expanded Jaws Universe Minute number 7. Thank you for your time in returning to the show. I am Ryan Dacco, the author of the Book of Quint and your host. And thank you very much for coming back for once again as we move through this movie Jaws 1 minute at a time, showing you how the Book of Quint expands the Jaws universe and opens up the scope of how we actually watch the movie with a proper prequel, bring out different narratives and more in-depth conversation, and actually show Jaws for what it's truly meant to be, that there's a story behind the story, that something else is going on there. And it's very exciting as we move through this, and there's a lot of response here. Over at our Instagram, at Book of Quint, I did post for episode 95, I posted a highlight reel of some of the points that I was making about the fencing in Jaws. That was viewed over 33,000 times. And boy, oh boy, let's recap. Let's start off. We're going to recap with that video right now, and let's see what created a lot of the controversy here. So if you look at the beginning of Jaws, broken fences is one of the themes that Spielberg has. Chrissie is running by broken fences and dilapidated dune fencing. Broken fence here with Brody family. 7th minute, we're going to go to Cassidy and Brody walking by more dune fencing, dilapidated fencing. Chrissie's remains are found amongst disheveled dune fencing with the broken wires and all that. Karate chopping of the picket fences. You have Mr. Kiesel of Kiesel's Bike Rental. Spielberg is telegraphing to us, the viewer. This is what makes Jaws so special, is that there are other planes of communication happening. Visually, things are being said without being stated. And Amity Island has all these picket fences everywhere, as you see in the town of Amity, that Martin Brody's walking by, that there are things happening that are trying to breach those boundaries and to create chaos when there should be order. Because what does a fence represent? A fence represents order, clear demarcation of property lines. And everything is already in chaos because the fencing is broken. Something is missing, and he has a lot of work to do. That is a direct result of Spielberg having the time to digest the material, but also having the time to set these shots up in ways that would be interesting, in ways that he could communicate as a filmmaker. Okay, so what happened was, after that 90-second video went out 33,000 times, over 1,000 times on YouTube, 33,000 times on Instagram, at Book of Quint. If you're not there, please do follow us over at Instagram. We have over 21,000 Jaws Obsession faithful are now following over at Instagram, and we are having a lot of fun over there. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of fans of the Book of Quint, and we are gathering over there, and that's where all the latest and greatest are going to happen. So if you haven't done so, please follow us over there. Also, if you're watching on YouTube or watching on Spotify, please subscribe and follow as well, so we can actually all coalesce and come together here, because there's something very special on the horizon that I want to do here. So as long as we stay as a group, we actually can do some amazing things, and that's what the whole purpose of the Jaws Obsession is for. So I'm very excited about that. So anyways, if you look at the comments of that video for the episode 95, with that fencing highlight video, about Spielberg's use of the fencing, boy, you guys were coming in. Some people were coming in very hot. A lot of people were sleeping on Spielberg here. Don't sleep on director Steven Spielberg. Some people are thinking that this is all happenstance, that these are coincidental, that shots just happen to have fencing there, that dune fencing always looks dilapidated, which, yes, of course, especially in the 70s era, you're going to have dune fencing that's around everywhere, and it does look dilapidated. But what I want to show you here is we're going to continue on this discussion, because when we analyze Jaws, especially here in the Jaws Obsession, I don't do this out of fishing for what I believe is something going on. For example, if it would be up to interpretation if you see a cloud formation and say, well, that cloud is supposed to represent this. We never want to manufacture stuff like that, and we never want to seem contrived when we are analyzing Jaws. What I try to deal with is absolutes. Of course, a lot of this is my personal opinion, but this is all coming from hours and hours of research, watching Jaws, but also of analyzing down to the frame level and getting into director Spielberg's mindset at the time. Remember, this is 1974 Steven Spielberg when they were filming this. This is not Steven Spielberg of E.T. and Jurassic Park and Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is very early Steven Spielberg when he is fighting for his career. So what you have to do is when you analyze how Jaws plays out and what makes Jaws so amazing is you have to look at Spielberg's earlier work and how he had to draw upon that. So when you think that this is all, what I want to do is, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show some evidence of that this fencing, that starting with this fencing as you go through the beginning of Jaws is actually very deliberate. It's intentional. There's intentional framing going on. And that is what leads me to say that Spielberg was communicating using fencing and the fences of what was Martha's Vineyard at the time, of Eggertown and other areas. But also you can actually see that they actually constructed new fencing in order to push this narrative. And that is that is what I was trying to say. And a lot of and in some of my responses into those that might have pushed back a little bit. What I wanted to say was wait for episode 96, because now I'm going to show you some other aspects, and we're actually going to draw into this that it's not as that early Steven Spielberg really was a master at making the mundane special. For example, in Jaws, having a scene of a father and son sitting at a dinner table and utilizing the actors that were there, and when Roy Scheider and Jay Mello were able to create that bonding moment, Steven Spielberg knew enough how to shoot it, when to shoot it, and get it into the film. And that was kind of the environment that Steven Spielberg set for Jaws with those non-shark scenes. And it's very exciting to see as we go in here. So what I want to do is I want to jump right in with after we saw the highlight reel. The fencing is not reading into it. It's not contrived. It's not searching for something. That this was actually very deliberate. It was not a mistake of why all these scenes connect and have a fluid style in a way. At the beginning of Jaws in the first 15 minutes, Steven Spielberg tapped into a universal stream of consciousness. And the result is an amazing visual production that we know of as Jaws. That's why I believe it's the greatest movie of all time, because this is not planned. He collected all the energies of the moment, of the surrounding area, of the actors that were contributing, of the extras, the actual islanders that they casted. When you talk about Herschel West or you talk about Lee Fierro, Mrs. Kintner, you have a lot of different energies that came in, and Steven Spielberg was able to harness that, which is amazing because you do not normally get something like this. Steven Spielberg was fearing for his career at this moment. When you see a lot of these scenes, the land scenes of Jaws that are opening up, even the Chrissie Watkins attack, the shark was indeed broken. It was not working. So to solve the compounding problem of how do I get through this movie when I just have actors and dialogue, but I have no monster in the monster movie, he actually went into earlier productions that he worked on. And it was a very, that there was a lot of creation on set, that there was a lot of creating while he was actually on set. I kind of compare it in a way to, if you're a fan of David Lynch. David Lynch, he was notorious for creating on set, when like Twin Peaks and Mulholland Drive. Of course, if you watch any of his movies, and if you look at any of the behind the scenes of his films, he wanted to get on scene. Sure, you had a script And sure, you had a blueprint of what you wanted, but when he got onto set, he loved to create with the energy of the moment. That's how the character of Bob was cast, with a crew member just being caught on screen when they were doing test camera pans. And that's how he got the Bob character into Twin Peaks, because he saw that frame and said, that's it, that's what I'm looking for. And so David Lynch was notorious for creating while he was on set, and something special would happen because his belief was art is created in the moment. You can't just plan it and go shoot it. And this is the same. You can look at even Stanley Kubrick was also one of those types of filmmakers that you create while you're on set. Sure, you have a plan of attack, but when you get there, the actor might say something, or there might be some energy, some tension between Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall on the set of The Shining, so you're able to capture a lot of that tension, and that's what Stanley Kubrick believed as well. That's why a lot of his shots, his productions, took a very, very long time. Now, early Steven Spielberg, at this time with Jaws, he was actually thrust into a situation that was very Kubrick and what David Lynch later on would actually come into play, where you had a lot of time on set and you had to create while you were there because the shark is not working. So the pre-planning actually fell through the bottom fell out of all that pre-planning. And what happens now is that you have this magic that's created. So what you have is the result is Steven Spielberg looking at his visuals, but also drawing on his creativity in order to make Jaws so special. Back in the Jaws Obsession episode 40, way back in 2022, we had the Jaws secret. What makes Jaws such a fast-paced thrill ride? Why can't the sequels or modern-day shark movies replicate it? What we talked about is that there's almost Jaws is set up into two halves. The first hour is its own arc, its own mini movie, so to speak, in that first hour, and it ends with Martin Brody opening the sheet, the hospital curtain in the hospital. And then the second half is a whole movie in itself. You can even see the soundtrack changes. John Williams goes to a more adventure score with Quint and On the High Seas tracking down the shark. So what you have in this first half, of Jaws, the first hour, it's pure Steven Spielberg, and Steven Spielberg makes it work because he's using a lot of his filmmaking talents in order to create a appealing visual narrative, because there are hardly any effects that he had to draw upon because the shark was not working. I saw a comment on Instagram where, or was it a YouTube video? I think it was a YouTube video where someone said that Jaws is, they said Jaws is the luckiest mistake in movie history. You know, we have a quote that a lot of people toss around from the Book of Quint, that the Quint turns to Herschel and he says, it's got nothing to do with luck, Herschel. And it's true that nothing that happened in Jaws had to do with luck. A lot of people might see like, oh, Spielberg was really lucky to have the shark broken because then this. It's like, because then he had to use yellow barrels to symbolize where the shark was, you know, the Chrissie Watkins attack scene. But you have to realize that it's not about luck, that Spielberg actually already had a few productions under his belt, and he had to be able to draw upon those productions in order to come out and rise to the challenge to actually make Jaws a successful motion picture without any effects and without the monster in this shark sequence, in this shark movie, without having a shark. So using other things to create tension, draw upon his knowledge of Hitchcock, but also his prior productions. That's why what I say is when we talk about the fencing in Jaws, and we want to show that it's very deliberate, before I get to the on-screen evidence or to some of the things that I have that pertain to Jaws, we're going to leave the Jaws universe right now, and we're going to go back to the 1971 production of Spielberg's 1971 episode of Columbo called Murder by the Book, directed by Steven Spielberg. What I wanted to show here is that when we talk about Jaws and the Jaws obsession, when I talk about Spielberg's techniques, that what I am doing is I am trying to get into the mindset of him back in the early 70s, from 71 up into 74, and what actually he had to draw upon. Because if you watch Spielberg later in his career, the budgets got bigger and the talent got better around him. He had a lot more experienced crew. He had everything that he can do. So therefore, the productions get more streamlined. They get more successful in that all the executable shots happen, all the effect sequences are nailed down. His productions take a whole new feeling than what you see with Jaws and before. If you go into Duel and Sugarland Express, which he filmed before Jaws, he was definitely upcoming. He was an upcoming filmmaker, but he showed his talent. But in those movies, in Duel, he had the truck, the monster truck that's chasing Dennis Weaver, and he was able to have all those shots because it's really stunts and trucks and cars that were available on set. And then you have, with Sugarland Express with Goldie Hawn, you had a lot of, it was almost a road chase scene with police chasing the couple with the child in the car. And there's a lot of visual things to draw on, a lot of car chase sequences and shots that you can create with in order to get through that movie. So there's something that you can actually do to create kinetic energy. But when you get into Jaws and you have just a bunch of actors on an island with a screenplay that needs a giant shark that's not working, so they have no shark effect. Now, what do? You have nothing. You can't do car chase scenes. You can't go to anything that he was able to do in Duel or Sugarland Express. You can't use any of those things. So he had to go back to what I believe, and what I'm seeing here is he had to go back to 1971 when he was on set and he directed the first series episode. So it's I think it's the number 3 or 4th Columbo episode, but it's the first season 1, episode 1 of when it actually went into a regular primetime series. Steven Spielberg directed Murder by the Book. And this is the episode that I've always gone back to and watched in order to see what kind of techniques would Spielberg use when you have no effect sequences. You can't do any car chase scenes. You can't do any gunfights. There aren't any monsters to draw on. Nothing Hitchcockian. No, there aren't any birds. So there's no monster trucks. It's just dialogue and people in rooms. And when you do this, then you can see that Spielberg rises to the occasion because he creates visual narratives and he connects the sequences using audio clues as well as visuals. He's telling a story outside of the dialogue, a feeling. He's creating a feeling, and he's giving something, and he's showing how special of a director he was at such a young age. Remember, he was 26 on set of Jaws. So we're talking Spielberg in his early 20s is on set with Peter Falk and Columbo. And he's going to do this. And I want to go into this episode here. This is the first time on the Jaws Obsession. We're really going to leave Jaws and we're going to go into this because what I wanted to show was we can't deny that Spielberg's shot selections and these visual cues about the fencing, these are certainly intentional in order to visually connect. But what I want to show you is that when you see a pattern, if he did this before in a previous production, then it's safe to say that he's deliberately doing this here in Jaws. Okay, so we're going to go over here and we're going to try to get through this. What I want to do is we're starting the episode right here. So I guess, long story short, we're going to have to spoil the episode for everybody here. If you haven't watched it, press pause now and you can go watch it. But what you have is a writing duo that's breaking up, and this Jack Cassidy over here on the right, he plays the scorned writer that is now going to lose his writing career because the guy that really writes the books is going and breaking off on his own. So he stages a murder. He kills the other writer, in order to get the insurance money. And that's how the episode opens up. Columbo is sent in to to solve the crime here. But what we have to do is we have to go around and we have to look at some of the visuals that Spielberg uses. He really uses the color red in this episode to push the narrative. And some people can say it's very heavy-handed, but you have to realize that a young Steven Spielberg was using these techniques in order to work out how to tell a story without just using the words, without just being dialogue heavy, how to seem interesting visually. And that's what happens, is that's why Jaws works so well, because it's so interesting visually, as well as we're interested in the narrative and what's going on and the amazing story with the amazing characters and the acting. But visually, he's already been crafting this using previous productions. So remember, there is no effects in this Columbo sequence. It's just Steven Spielberg using what he believes his filmmaking talent at this time, this raw filmmaking talent. But you have to watch the visuals that he deliberately sets up coming up here. Director Spielberg is using the color red. He's using red lights. He's using things to actually draw a narrative, a visual narrative, and bring you through this episode. So you are interested in the characters right here. Director's supervision. Nothing happens out of coincidence. There are no coincidences. Remember that. There are no coincidences when you write a book. There are definitely no coincidences when you direct a feature film, especially when you're dealing with a high caliber director, a young up and coming Steven Spielberg. He's doing this on purpose because he's almost creating a demo reel. He's showing that he can take an episode of Columbo and he can make it into a visually appealing episode. Remember, he's also working with a 1:3:3 aspect ratio. He's working with almost a literal square of network television. He's not working with the CinemaScope 2:3:5 aspect ratio of a wide angle lens with a nice view, visually tell a story. So we're going to leave this scene because what do you think is going to happen to her? Of course, we all know what's going to happen to her. She's trying to bribe the killer. She's trying to blackmail the killer, which is not going to work out well for this character here.
And more gifts.
Why, Mr. Franklin, how lovely.
So something bad is going to happen. He also has this look like he is ready to take out another victim. And director Spielberg placed her in a red dress.
Magnificent meal. Where'd you learn to cook so well?
And remember, like visually, we have the yellow kitchen, and I know this is the 1970s, and the decor around the house might be something that they had access to, but definitely the color is the color of the red dress is going to symbolize something bad's going to happen. So do you see, like, even if I turn the volume down, what is happening is that we have direct evidence that Steven Spielberg was using a visual narrative to bring this dialogue-heavy episode. No effects, no action sequences, no foot chases. It was really just tension-filled. And this is the blueprint that he had to draw on when he was thrust into this situation of a chaotic nature that was the set of Jaws in June and July of 1974. Using that method of watching the Columbo episode, we're going to lateral that over here. And we're not going to do a full recap like we did with the prior minutes, but what I want to do is I want to run through. There's two pieces of evidence that a few pieces of evidence here, and we'll just run through this really quick to show that when Spielberg was using the visual fencing narrative to connect these early scenes. We have one, the night that we had the bonfire, when Chrissie's running, and you have the dune fencing that they're running through. If you watch this sequence here, when they were running, she's running not just the fencing, there's fencing in the foreground, there's also fencing in the background as well. And what's really interesting here is, see this pattern where Cassidy's running through all the different fencing. This is actually something that would have been found on the beach. This is a very, very, very cool set that I don't think they really constructed this. I think this is just how the dune fencing was. This looks very realistic. This is how a lot of that fencing was back in the 70s. And but one of the aspects is that I want to go back to Memories from Martha's Vineyard. This is kind of one of the best books that you can get about with behind the scenes of Jaws from by the author Matt Taylor. So over here on page 213 in the book, you have the guitar player. This gentleman right here. His name is Michael Hayden, and he lives on Oak Bluffs in Martha's Vineyard, and so he has a statement here. Now I'm going to read it very quick here. I was hired as the guitar player for the bonfire on the beach. The assistant director, Tom Joyner, said to me, "Play something." I asked if he cared what, and he said, "No, whatever, just play something." I had recently learned Otis Redding's The Dock of the Bay, and so the chord progression I played for the camera was very similar, but with a bit more country flavor. Once Joyner had set things up on the way he thought they should be, Spielberg came over to look everything over. He had mostly been walking around in the dunes, demarcating Chrissie's path to the water. I distinctly remember him listening to the chords I was playing and saying, "I have no problem with that." Shooting that night went on until 11 o'clock, 7 hours and 35 takes, all for 30 seconds of celluloid. So he's talking about shooting this sequence, which we talked about earlier in minute 2, the bonfire sequence. But what he says that we have to focus on, he says that Michael Hayden, the guitar player, specifically says that Spielberg had mostly been walking in the dunes, demarcating Chrissie's path to the water. So that shows you that Spielberg was very focused. He was very, very, very focused on this type of sequence, that he really wanted to have this down, and he was going and searching around for the right type of fencing and the right way to film this to visually give it that connection into later scenes. And I think this is fascinating, is that so that's one of the first clues that we have, is that Spielberg was deliberately looking for areas of where to intentionally frame Chrissie's path to the beach through fencing. It's undeniable now that we have firsthand intelligence from the guitar player Michael Hayden on set that Spielberg was mostly walking around the dunes looking for the perfect path, looking for the perfect visuals. That this was not happenstance. That's just didn't. This is deliberate. The framing of these fencings was certainly deliberate. Or back into minute 6 when we talked about this fencing here. Okay, I always thought that this is like, if you look at this fencing, it's very odd. It's very, if you had a house, logically, you would not have a bar, the cross beam over here where if you were lifting something or bringing something big into the house. What is the function of this? That's what tells me that this is a movie set piece. This was specifically built by the crew. And now I have visual proof here on page 98 from Memories of Martha's Vineyard here. I'm gonna make this picture bigger and put it on screen there, but it has visuals of what the Brody's house looked like as they were arrived on set. And the Brody house, you can actually see when I put this picture up here, that you can see way in the back, you can see that little side porch here. You can see that there is no fencing that comes across this backyard like that. That is a fence that was created by the set. Looks like they even removed some sort of tree or bush that was there in order to give this open sequence of this open shot of the water. But this is directly placed there. It's very deliberate. That shows us that this was built by the set, by the set construction department, and that Spielberg directed this to go up. So this was intentional. This is not just like, they just had access to that, and that's just how fences look, and that we're reading too much into this fence theory. No. This was Spielberg directly doing this in order to make this scene more appealing. and to have this broken fencing in order to connect a lot of these scenes. Brody and Cassidy walking on the beach here. And remember, now this would be what, if you look very closely, this is exactly what dune fencing looks like. This is very dilapidated. This is a natural how they look. There's slats where they are wired together. If you look very closely, you're going to see the wire is corroded. They use just a cheap steel, and that would the salt would make them turn brown. As you saw, old fencing would actually have brown rust-covered wire that would hold it together. And that's what you see here, okay? So we know that this is not really a set piece. Remember, we're not in the Jaws universe right now. We're actually looking at the production of Jaws. So we're talking about set pieces, is that this is something that was actually on scene, very realistic, and that is exactly how it all looked, especially if the beach was hit by a couple of storms and if this fencing was very old. But if you look at this wire, it's very rust colored, okay? I want you to also look at Cassidy holding this piece of fence. Watch how he breaks it and he throws it off to the side. You can look at other pieces here, okay? This clearly is not something that the actor Jonathan Filley just said, I'm going to do this. This is Spielberg wanted him to do this. He wanted him to break that here. And how do we know that? We're going to go to... Okay, so this is one of the deleted scenes. This is one of the deleted scenes of that's on the Blu-ray of Jaws. And what I wanted to show was this is another alternate take. This was an earlier take that Spielberg had. So we have Cassidy and Brody are framed. They're walking by the dune fencing. I want everyone to see that also Jonathan Filley, the actor, character Cassidy, he's carrying a piece of dune fencing in his hands. And watch what he does. Breaks it and he throws it down. So that right there is a deliberate act by the actor that he was told you have to break this stick at this part in the scene. And that was very important for Steven Spielberg to have him do this multiple takes.
To drown. Look, I reported to you, didn't I? You live here?
So that was very important for Steven Spielberg to have him break that, and he's throwing these pieces down here. So remember, we're looking at this from the set. That's from multiple takes, obviously, but we can also say inside the Jaws universe that these pieces were just broken and left here. So it's nothing that really disrupts, but it also is, we're kind of pulling the curtain back and seeing the mechanisms of the Great and Powerful Oz here. But I'm doing this on purpose in order to show that everything that happens in this movie Jaws is intentional. There is a lot of stuff that was done deliberately, and that nothing is by accident, because that's the way director Spielberg had a grasp of the material, but he was just in the zone. He wanted these types of connections. What I find interesting is that you have Cassidy breaking fencing here, literally physically breaking fencing, and later on, you're going to have Polly say that they're karateing the picket fences, and you're going to have vandals that are wrecking the fences. So we actually have physical example of someone breaking fences here. We're going to talk about breaking fences earlier. So this is a concrete narrative that goes through Jaws at the beginning to tie this up, to set the stage, to set a tone of boundaries and problems that are happening, and a chaotic thing that's kind of coming into play into this society that was in order, but now it's in disorder. That is what Spielberg is doing. Remember, the red dress, the red restaurant, the red police lights signaling doom and murder in the Columbo episode. Spielberg is doing that here with fencing. It's very, very apparent here. One more thing, if we go to the dune fencing here, when we see right here, when they discover Chrissie's remains, I want everybody to look very closely. This dune fencing, look at the wire now. The wire is all silver. So this is new fencing, and you can see that it's been painted so that this is actually part of the set. This is deliberate fencing that was made. The way it's broken here is very odd. It doesn't show a natural way of breaking, that someone was out here vandalizing fences, obviously, earlier inside the Jaws universe. But outside, this is done. They painted these darker in order to give a more visual appeal. Obviously, the cinematographer, Bill Butler, it looks better than having the gray wood of newer dune fencing. But because this wire is not rusted out, we know that this is not natural to the area. That's very, very, very important here, because then we can actually say that this is deliberate, that Spielberg's use of fencing here and the framing of it is deliberate, obviously, because he's the director. He says where the camera's going to go. But this type of set direction and this type of fencing just being here was not here naturally. That was placed here by the set, by the crew. There's actually more that was left on the cutting room floor. We're going to go back to this deleted scenes here, and we're going to see the alternate take of Cassidy when they discover Chrissie's remains. So do you see right here? Now look at this frame. That Spielberg was really, some people can say it's heavy-handed. You can say it's heavy-handed, maybe too much on the nose. But you can see that he was actually looking, these visual frames of the fence slatting or the fencing bars in the foreground with the characters in the background was very deliberate and very intentional here. Again, this scene is not needed in the film, but if you look at the way he's framed it here, he's framed Cassidy looking through the bars of the fencing, but also you can see that the fencing was painted darker so it doesn't clash with the backdrop of the sky. Fascinating. It's very fascinating things, and that's what leads us to the actual fencing theory. So hopefully that we can actually talk about so hopefully we can kind of win some of the naysayers and some of the doubters back to our side. That's Steven Spielberg, and he definitely was communicating through the fencing of Amity Island and trying to show the doom and gloom that's coming into play here. So here we are. Let's go right back into minute 7 of Jaws. Now that we got the fencing theory out of the way, I know that it was a very long way, but hey, why not? You know, we're only going to be here once. We're only alive once. So let's get this all out. Let's talk about Jaws in the most complete and most comprehensive way possible. And that is, obviously, we pride ourselves on doing that in the Jaws Obsession. So thanks for bearing with me on that. But now let's jump right back into minute number 7. Minute number 7 here. Okay, so minute number 7, we start out with Brody pulling out from the driveway here of the Brody house. Now, I wanted to show the location of the Brody house. We're going to bring in the Book of Quint here. Okay, in parts of, let's talk about the Book of Quint. This frame right here that you're looking at, we're pausing this for those that are just listening on the audio version of the show. We're pausing this with the Chevy Blazer that as the Amity police truck is leaving, we're looking down Brody's road where the residence is, the Brody residence, and we see this bay in the back, or this body of water. We also see some land across the way there. Couple of things that happen here. If we go to our Book of Quint, if you flip into the page 239, 239, when they're talking about, when Herschel's talking about the color of the barrels, he says, I painted until the bristles on our only brush came off. The brightest color in the Amity hardware store was 2 cans of 1951 Fleet Armor Yellow from Chrysler, automotive paint left over from a road painting project on the North Shore. And this is the one that I always thought was that when you have the North Shore, this road painting project, that this was the color that I was going for, was the similar to the yellow barrels that when Quint needed a bright color, what color would they use? Now, obviously, this was from 1951, was the Fleet Armor Yellow that he used, that he said was the road painting project. But in the 70s, in 1974, when Jaws takes place in the summer of 1974, remember, we're jumping into the Jaws universe, that this is obviously the Department of Transportation road color for that was used at the time. But I noticed that this is where the yellow lines were painted, so that's why I picked the North Shore. And what I wanted to show you was that I actually do in the Book of Quint. So in the Book of Quint, we're going to bring in the map that's of the Amity Island, okay? That it's in the appendix in the Book of Quint. And I want everyone to go in. We're going to zoom in right to the northeast part of the island. This little area right here. So what I always imagined was the Brody household is like right up on here. This is the land that we're actually seeing across the way. And this is the road that comes down here. So the road painting project of the North Shore, later on they're going to say that the chief lives on the other side of the island when the holiday roast scene, when Den Herder and Charlie are rigging up their holiday roast to chains on docks. They're going to be down on the South Shore. And when he says, don't worry, the chief lives on the other side of the island, that's why we know the chief lives on the North Shore. And by taking the North Shore route, you can actually see what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you that this map was specifically set up. So when the chief goes in, he's going to take this route to get down to South Beach. Okay? You're going to see that normally his commute would be to go here and then go down into the town. But today he's going to go over and meet Cassidy and Hendricks over on South Beach because of the reported missing girl. So this is where, if everyone looks there, this is where the Brodies live. This is the North Shore, and that's the body of water that they're seeing. That's the side. Remember, this is not really to scale. It's not exact. I wish I had more time when the book went into publication to do something a little bit more exact. It's just to give us all an idea of what are we looking at when we see across the way here. So I wanted to show, and we're going to keep that map open because we're going to come back to that map in a second here. I want everybody to show that I want everybody to see here at 7 minutes and 8 seconds, the power line configuration that's on the Brody Street, okay? If you look way in the back here, and if everyone's listened to the show before, I am a working high voltage power lineman. I work on power lines for a living. And if you notice back here, you have a transformer, and you have, if we were to zoom in here, if you look, and I'm going to probably zoom in, I'll put a zoomed in frame up here on the screen, but you have two little, those two that are on the top crossarm. Those are actually what we call fuse switches. Okay, we call them cutout switches. We know that there's two hot sides to this transformer, so it's a delta configuration. If any of linemen are out there, you have delta and you have Y. Y is a grounded system. So you have you transformer. You have one hot tap coming up to your primary, and then you'd have a grounded bushing, or you have no ground. The ground would be on the secondary side, or the tank would be grounded to the neutral. Here you have two cutouts, so that's a delta configuration. You actually have two primary sides that's going in. It's a very old system. We have a lot of delta around here in Syracuse, New York, because upstate New York is where some of the earliest generation and power distribution happened when Westinghouse and Tesla were doing their generation out of Niagara Falls and Buffalo. A lot of those old power lines came east from Buffalo to Rochester into Syracuse. So we have a lot of old voltages and old power lines still being used. These voltages all stayed the same. And when you have a delta configuration, you actually have two cutouts up on the top. And that's why I know that these power lines were very old. This is actually from the 50s in the Book of Quint. And I wanted to establish in the Book of Quint that the power system on Amity is very old. that it's not updated, and because it's a third island out to sea. But one of the reasons why I picked in page 225, let's see here, page 225, when they're talking to the line foreman, and he says, just be careful, there's 34,500 volts, three-phase headed in and off that island. The reason why I picked 34,500 volts, because that's a very old distribution transmission system. It's very old. That was considered high voltage back in the day. And my theory was that is what would be brought over back in the 50s in order to give power to Amity Island, would have to be an old voltage system, 34.5. So now 34.5 would be stepped down to 4,800 volts. And on each phase, you probably have 2,770 volts on each phase. Goes in here, so both of them together, these two switches would make 4,800 volts. That's the primary needed to power that transformer to give 120 and 240 or 110, 220 service to the Brody household. So I wanted to show that even in this frame, this is such an important frame for myself when crafting the expanded Jaws universe and the world of Amity Island, that I actually went into the voltage configuration by seeing the old style transformer. Here you have the secondary voltages are on the lower cross arm, but up here with the two primary wires on each side of the cross arm, that allowed me to craft what we see in the Book of Quint of what the voltages are. Does that come into play later on? Yes, in Jaws 2, it comes into play. But it also gives a sense of world building, and that I wanted to show, not just from the map of where the Brodies live, but I wanted to show the actual layout of Amity Island and bring it all into play. That it actually plays a part in the yellow for the yellow barrels. Came from the road painting project on the North Shore. 34.5. So the 34,500 volts that come into Cable Junction from Jaws 2 that power the whole Amity Island, that was all derived from this frame. It's very interesting when you look at that. And that's all in the 7th minute of Jaws, 7 minutes and 8 seconds into the movie. And I just wanted to share that with everybody. I think that's I always think that's fascinating whenever now modern day, let's see here, modern day, if we see what this okay, so this is some of my research right here. This is what the street looks like now. So there's your frame, and that's what it looks like today. But you can see up here, the voltage has been stepped up. Now you have, it could be anything. It could be 7620. It could be anything that's 7,620 volts. It's now gone to single phase. So these poles were modernized. The voltage was converted and stepped up. Most likely, yeah, you can see the street light in the back. The modern day street light was put up, but the same thing applies though. It's a single phase, so it's gone to a Y system instead of a delta configuration. It's all very fascinating if you're a voltage geek like I am, and you want to look at things like that. But that goes to that. That's why. That's how in depth I went when I was writing the Book of Quint. I really wanted to give a sense of realism and bring you right into Amity Island and give you a sense of all those numbers are not arbitrary. They're not just a guessing game. That they are actually designed to do there. And that's one of the things I feel that the Jaws needed. That if you're going to have a prequel to Jaws, that you need something with such detail and such realism that it puts you right into the island of Amity, and it brings you right into the film Jaws in such a way that it enhances the way you see the movie. And that's what we're doing here. We're watching the movie differently using the Book of Quint. It's all very fascinating. So let's continue on here. we're going to continue on as Brody pulls away. He waves by to Sean and Ellen Brody. And now we're going to come here as Brody's driving down the island. I wanted to pause right there. He's going to come back. He's going to pass the Amity Island Welcomes You billboard. But I want to pause right about here. Okay, we're going to see this part of the island, and then it hooks back around, and we're going to see this water. Okay, so what I tried to do was I tried to draw that when we look at this part of Amity Island where he's driving, I'm trying to say that this is where he wakes up and you're looking across at this, and now he's driving past here. Okay, so now that's the area that you're looking back, is you're looking back on the other side of that body of water is where his house would be. And now he's driving past the lighthouse. We have a lighthouse here. And this is where the Amity Island Welcomes You billboard is. What I wanted to show was logically, remember, if we step outside of the Jaws universe, that billboard is actually at the far end, the far west side of Martha's Vineyard. And everybody always kind of giggles if you are watching Jaws thinking that it's on Martha's Vineyard. All the locations are out of the way. That Chief Brody's driving 45 minutes to the west in order to come back to Edgartown. It's just, that's why Martha's Vineyard is the actor that played Amity Island. But when you look at Amity Island, let's go into the Jaws universe. When we look at Amity Island, why would that billboard would have to be Amity Island Welcomes You? It would have to be in an area where tourists are constantly driving by. And that's what I believe that's Mayor Vaughn's plan is. If you look at where the ferry terminal is, the ferry terminal, the ferries come in here, the tourists get on their cars and then they drive straight up here, and then they come by the Amity Welcomes You billboard right here as they come down into the town of Amity. So right here, you'd have more of an access road with trucks and delivery trucks. But what I find interesting is that I wanted to show that Mayor Vaughn has a plan for everything, and that he steers people this way, and they go by the Amity Island Welcomes You billboard, and this is the main route to get into town, and you just go right in there. And that's what Chief Brody's doing at the beginning of Jaws. He's driving, and we're following along, so we're going by the lighthouse, and the Amity Island billboard is right here. And that's what I'm saying, is that he's going to go there, and that's, we're getting a tour of the island, so to speak. But if you read the Book of Quint, you look at this map, you're going to enjoy Jaws a little bit more, right? Because now we get a lay of the land. Now we're like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so the Chief lives up there. Town of Amity's here. The ferry's here. Okay, this is the Amity Harbor Lighthouse. Averill Bay, where the kids are swimming. Aha, okay. Now we know that if Chrissie is over here, and that's where Cassidy is over there with Hendrix, that's about if the scale is 2 miles here, you're looking at about 2, maybe 3 miles, 3.5 miles of driving. And when Chief Brody says it's going to do 15, 20 minutes, he's thinking it's going to be about 15, 20 minutes to go there. Or maybe he's going to stay with the North Shore, come here, and then he's going to jump down and just jump and take a side road that comes right down into the South Beach Highway here. So there would be all networks of little roads and connector roads coming through the center of the island. But what I find fascinating is that if you look at the appendix, and that's what we're doing here, is we're just going down the map of Amity. We're using the map of Amity to enhance the way we watch Jaws. And that would take Chief Brody about 15, 20 minutes to get ready, get the rest of his clothes on, and get in the car and get down to South Beach over here to this little point where he is going to be talking to Cassidy that we see next. Fascinating stuff. All very fascinating. That's why the billboard is there. That's why Chief is taking the route that he's taking, all with the Book of Quint. And that's, so you have to think that Chief Brody lives somewhere over here, and he just came around and then came up here. Okay? That's very, very interesting. I love following this along and just creating this world of Amity Island with you. This billboard's going to come into play later on. We'll talk about it more in the later minutes after it gets vandalized. But this is the Amity Island Welcomes You billboard, 50th annual regatta, July 4th to the 10th. That's going to come into play as well. So this was obviously constructed on by the set crew. Marty Milner was one of the he was the foreman on the set of Jaws, and he was on our episode 50, and he detailed how he made this and oversaw the construction of this frame and how they were able to make the billboard here because it had to be taken down. This is in the town of, this is over in Aquina at the end of the island. So now we cut to 7:29, 7 minutes, 29 seconds. We're walking with Cassidy, and we're walking with Brody.
Nobody saw her go into the water? Somebody could have. I was sort of passed out.
You mean she ran out on you?
No, sir. She must have drowned. Look, I reported to you, didn't I?
You live here?
Okay, there's a couple of things going on here that I wanted to talk about. We've already talked about he's holding a piece of the picket fence, and he's frustrated. So remember, we're gonna talk about this a little bit. The location of where they actually are right now is South Beach, but it's South Beach is very, very long, and this would be way towards the end. There's these two little points here. And I just have a strong feeling that this would be the area that I always felt that this is where Chrissie went into the water. And right now he's back there with Cassidy, and Hendricks went on ahead to go comb the beach looking for the body or any kind of remains that might have washed ashore.
She must have drowned. Look, I reported to you, didn't I?
You live here?
No, Hartford. I go to Trinity. My folks live in Greenwich.
Okay, a couple of things there.
Supposed to drown.
When the Brody stumble here, when he this would have been the same dune that Cassidy falls down earlier when he was drunk, and that he tumbles down when he was trying to take his shirt off, and Chief Brody also stumbles as well.
To you, didn't I?
So that is that I believe that's what we're looking at here. This is the same path. We're also going to see that Chief is carrying Chrissie's clothes, her purse, and they've collected her things, and they're walking the same path. That's what Chief Brody says. He says, take me step by step on when was the last time you saw her? How did you get to the water? And he's asking her these things about, did she run out on you? And he says, no, sir. What you see here is he's looking at some sunglasses here.
No, no, sir.
Okay. This is actually Chrissie's sunglasses.
She must have drowned. Look, I reported to you, didn't I?
He held them up and he's looking at them because what he's doing is he's actually seeing he's checking to see if they are prescription sunglasses or not. Did she have good eyesight? Could she have gotten lost in her way and not been able to find back because she couldn't see where she was going? So he sees that they are normal sunglasses, so he's just going to put them back.
No, Hartford. I go to Trinity.
He's going to put them back into the case here.
Yeah, I'm an islander.
But watch what he does with the sunglasses here. He tucks them back into the purse and they start running. Okay. So we have to, I thought for the longest time he was taking his own sunglasses off and he already put his regular prescription glasses on and he was just doing something. But no, those are Chrissie's sunglasses and that he's just going through her purse looking to see if he can find an ID, but he's also going through her purse and checking the things, trying to find details about her. It tells us what? What does this tell us? Brody is a pretty good detective. He actually knows what he's doing here. It's pretty interesting that he has these things. He's gone through he's gone through this process enough that he's trying to learn about the victim. He's using clues that are on scene, and he's just trying to paint a more realistic picture of what's going on. So that's why he's looking at those glasses there.
Look, I reported to you, didn't I?
Okay. Also, let's also look at here. We're going to give a hat tip to Andy Curry and Mark over in Mark over in that goes by 3 Yellow Barrels on Instagram. Mark and through Andy Curry, they were able to show us some really interesting that Mark had a neat little theory that he followed up on, and he pointed me in this direction, where he said that he spoke to the shop owner on Martha's Vineyard, and this purse by Chrissie's purse, is actually from the Wampanoag Tribe over by the billboard area on Martha's Vineyard, that they sell all sorts of items that the Native American jewelry and things that they are able to, that they make and they sell over in that area, that this purse is actually part of their tribal designs and the art that they make. And he said that the bag used by Chrissie was indeed manufactured and purchased in his tribal shop. This is the owner of the shop that he contacted for verification. Said the Wampanoag people are the indigenous people who traditionally lived on Martha's Vineyard. When I visited the island for the 50th anniversary events on the coach tour, we visited the Wampanoag Tribe of Gay Head Aquina. There were handcrafted shops, and there were bags that were eerily close to the famous Chrissie bag. And Mark sent a picture of the bag that he has that's very similar that I'll put up on the screen here. The Wampanoag Tribe here, we're looking at the Wampanoag Tribes. The Wampanoag Tribe's historical territory included islands of Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, as well as parts of eastern Rhode Island. The Wampanoag Nation comprised several villages, each with its own local chief or sachem. So I have a picture here of what we're looking at. This is the map of Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, Cape Cod, and we're seeing where the Wampanoag Tribe is down here. It's very right at the very end of which is Aquina of Martha's Vineyard. They actually sell these items like these purses here, as well as they are up in Mashpee. The Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe is over in this area of Cape Cod on the western side, southwest of Cape Cod. You're going to see that there's also up in Taunton and all around that you have areas where the Wampanoag Tribe has established areas where you can find the Wampanoag Tribe and actually probably find these types of purses. We're trying to show that Chrissie is not she's not foreign from this area. She is actually a local. She's not an islander, because we got that from Cassidy, and in other takes where he said that he met her on the boat. But we know that from just this purse, we know that Chrissie is from this area. Is she from Martha's Vineyard? Is she from Cape Cod? If we look at the map of the area that's included in the appendix of the Book of Quint, the reason why I wanted to go into this was I wanted to show exactly where Cape Cod is, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and here's Amity Island is the third outlier island here, okay? That means Chrissie is either from Martha's Vineyard, or she's from Cape Cod, or New Bedford, or even Rhode Island, and she got the purse somewhere in this area. If this is her purse, then we know that she is a New Englander. She is from this area. We can actually establish that fact using the clues in Jaws. So if we talk about Chrissie Watkins and the origins of Chrissie Watkins, we can actually put her in this area just using this Wampanoag Tribe purse. And this is a great backup information that Mark sent us. I got to thank Andy and Mark. You guys are great. You guys help me out a lot. And this is the stuff we need, is that in the Jaws obsession, when we all come together, we actually can create this ultra realistic image, and we can actually we can look at these characters like they're real people, and we can actually tell more of the story. We can expand this universe. So that's what we're going to do here. Is what we're going to show is that the Wampanoag Tribe purse that Chrissie has came from this area right here. Does she live on Martha's Vineyard? Does she live on Cape Cod? We're going to need more of the story in order to figure that out. But for now, we know that she is in this area. She is from here. So her coming to Amity Island was her running away from something that we talked about in the earlier minutes of the movie. As everybody in Amity Island in the Book of Quint talks about Amity is the throwaway island. It's the last stop. It's where people that are looking to move away or run away from society, they all kind of congregate and collect on Amity Island. Very fascinating. And that's what we can all tell right here by this purse here. So thank you very much, Andy and Mark. Awesome details. Awesome details we're unearthing here at 7 minutes and 45 seconds in Brody's hand is the Wampanoag Tribe purse that Chrissie is that has all her belongings in. Let's pay attention to the dialogue that's coming up here. 7:46 to 8 minutes. We're going to talk about the dialogue that Brody is talking to Cassidy.
You live here?
No, Hartford. I go to Trinity. My folks live in Greenwich.
Your folks were born here, right?
Yeah, I'm an Islander. They moved off when my dad retired. You an Islander?
No, New York City. You here for the summer?
Okay. I love how Jaws is very efficient in it wasn't always like this. If you look at the script, there's a lot more dialogue that goes on in the script and even in the earlier takes and the outtakes of this sequence. But we get a couple of details. We talk about this term comes into play
Look, I
here.
reported to you, didn't I?
You live here?
No, Hartford. I go to Trinity. My folks live in Greenwich.
Your folks were born here, right?
Yeah, I'm an Islander.
Okay, but your folks were born here. Yeah, I'm an Islander. Okay, so now this term Islander comes into play. And Chief Brody says, do you live here? He says, no, Hartford. So he lives over in Hartford, Connecticut. But your folks were born here. And he says, yeah, I'm an Islander. So now we're the first term of this Islander term comes in. The first time we hear this Islander term is right at this scene. And what's really interesting here is we're already establishing that Brody is from outside and that he's dealing with people that are living on this island that know about the island. They have a history on the island.
They moved off when my dad retired. You an Islander?
No, New York City. You here for the summer?
Are you an Islander? No, New York City. So now we have other confirmation other than the New York accents and playing on the accents of with Ellen and Martin in the bedroom. Now we actually have perfect confirmation that Martin Brody is from New York City, but he is also not an Islander. This is interesting because this sets the tone going in that Brody is an outsider. And he's dealing with, he's coming in to something that a lot of people, so he has a whole community behind a mayor and a media and everybody that's there. They're all on one side, and Martin Brody is the outsider here. And that's 8 minutes. At 8 minutes, we hear the whistle, and we actually hear the whistle of Hendrix, that he has found something further down South Beach. And that's where we're going to stop right here as we look down South Beach and we see Hendrix way in the back here. This is actually 2 minutes into the 8th minute. So we'll talk about this in the 8th minute. But with that, I would like to thank everybody for listening, for breaking down not only the fencing theory and the fencing connections and the directorial efforts by Steven Spielberg at the beginning of this episode. There we are, episode 96 in the books, minute number 7. Thank you very much for listening.
The way to go home. I'm tired, I want to go to bed. I had a little think about an hour ago, and it's got right to my head. Wherever I may roam, by land or sea or home.
I always look for this at the last minute here. The movie Jaws is copyrighted property of Universal Studios. Any references and sampling from the movie Jaws in this episode is intended to fall within Section 107 of the Copyright Act. The copyrighted materials are fairly used for the purposes of criticism, comment, reporting, teaching, and research. The materials used here are protected by the fair use guidelines of Section 107 of the Copyright Act. All rights reserved to the copyright owners. Okay, thank you very much. This is now December, and we are approaching the Christmas season. If you're looking for any signed copies of the Book of Quint, there are still some available over at EdgartownBooks.com, over at Edgartown Books. Matthew over there will send one your way. If you give him a call, the contact number is listed in the link tree that's at the Book of Quint, at Book of Quint over at Instagram. Or you can go to their contacts page, which I will put in the link tree in the description of this broadcast, whatever platform you're listening or watching on. But if you give him a call, phone orders only, because we had people trying to buy multiple books and list them for very high prices on other platforms. So in order to keep everybody on a equal playing field and try to get a book to you, Matthew is doing phone orders still. If you give him a call over at Edgartown Books, you can, there's signed books over there. He'll send one your way. Exciting times ahead. Thank you very much for listening, and show me the way to go home.